Welcome to the Commissioner's Corner for February 2021. We are all thrilled that it is, in fact, 2021. We are all certainly tired of 2020. I will say 2021 has felt like a bit of a hangover from 2020, but we do see a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're all moving forward. I'm your host, Scott Vargo, Summit County Manager. We have new county commissioners that began. They were sworn in January, and so we were doing a socially distanced show today. I'm sitting way over here on this end and way over there on the other side of the table. In the studio is newly elected County Commissioner Tamara Pogue. Welcome, Tamara.
Thank you.
We are, again, super excited to have a new set of commissioners, bringing a new set of priorities and new direction to the Summit County government. And we will have Josh Blanchard joining us shortly as well to introduce himself. So what we're going to do this morning, it is February the 8th, just so everybody knows when we're taping, about 9 o'clock in the morning, which is way too early, apparently, for our studio producer, Brad Williamson. But anyway, we're going to get going. I'm going to start with just giving Tamara an opportunity to introduce herself, and then we're going to walk through just some of the priorities that she's bringing to Summit County government.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Great to have you.
Thank you. So I'm Tamara Pogue. I represent District 2, which is Keystone, Summit Cove, Montezuma, Dillon Valley, Frisco. Like I forgot anybody in there, but everybody elects us statewide, everybody elects us countywide. So I'm excited to get started. It's a bit like drinking through the waterfall. Certainly COVID provides an extra layer of complexity to the job, and I'm so far really learning, talking to folks, hearing from Summit County what's important to them, and learning about a whole bunch of new issues.
Yep, and certainly drinking from a fire hose or a waterfall, as you said. We have lots and lots of things to learn about, and we obviously have to try to give it to you in sort of bite-sized chunks, but there's always a lot of information coming your guys' way. I know we've talked a little bit as we've gotten started about sort of expectations and priorities that the new county commissioners have. Mm-hmm. And of course, Elizabeth is relatively new as well, only having been on the board for a couple of years. And so why don't you talk about what some of your personal key priorities are?
I think overall, my number one priority is to make sure that folks know Summit County is here to serve them. So to the extent that we can be really transparent, have lots of conversations with the community, be really accessible to the community, that is my number one priority. Certainly in my past jobs as the executive director of the FERC and then as the CEO of Peak Health Alliance, workforce issues will continue to be a priority. And I think for me, the number one priority is really what I'm calling economic resiliency. So trying to find ways to make our community more sustainable, starting with the development or the redevelopment of a strategic plan and a master plan, looking at the ways that our economy, our workforce, and our natural resources all come together. And ideally, we could find a balance between those three things. So in terms of my issues, the things that I am taking on to start with are certainly behavioral health. We've done a great job in Summit County of moving the needle, but there's a long way to go, particularly in areas like substance abuse treatment. Focusing on transportation and making sure we have enough funding from the state for our infrastructure. Looking at equity and issues around equity, making sure that Summit County government is accessible to everybody and our community is a welcoming place for everyone. And then public safety is another priority for me. I want to make sure that public safety, again, is equitable for everybody, but that we really are doing what we need to do as a community to keep every single person safe. So those are some of the things that I have dug in around in the first 3 weeks, almost 4 now. And I'm looking forward to learning more about those issues and continuing to hear from the community what's important for them.
Great. Talk a little bit about, from an outreach perspective, I know that we began some town hall meetings around COVID shortly after the three of you were sworn in. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about that as one way to reach out, and then other ideas that you may have.
Yeah, so the town halls are really an opportunity for the community to ask us questions, to watch what is important to us, and to sort of hear what's going on in the community, both in terms of COVID, but also beyond COVID. We'll also be doing events events like this morning. We will be doing a regular column to the Summit Daily, certainly talking to our radios on a regular basis, and really just, meeting with as many groups as possible. Certainly I welcome email as a way for folks to connect to me, but really I do want to understand right now as we're in COVID, I see a certain amount of opportunity for us to take a step back, think about the things that really work for us as a community, but also think about the things that we might want to do differently coming out of COVID. So really we're just trying to make ourselves as accessible to the community as possible to hear how folks envision our future.
Great. One of the other really big ones, obviously, that we've talked about a fair amount, and there's going to be a number of work sessions and some other conversations about it, is the idea of economic development, economic diversity, economic resiliency. So talk a little bit about what that really means to you. You briefly talked about sort of the trifecta there.
Yeah. I think in my job in sort of human services, I've really begun to understand that one of our biggest problems as a community is that 70% of our jobs are in the tourist industry. And that's great. I am grateful to our tourist partners and employers for what they bring to our community. But the challenge is when you have that much or that many jobs in one industry, something like COVID happens and you're disproportionately affected. The other challenge, I think, with tourist jobs is that they tend to be lower wage jobs. And so for me, having this conversation about diversifying our economic base is one way to get at both of those problems. You look at communities like Steamboat and what they've done to bring other types of employers that are related to the tourism industry to the table. And I think that's a model we want to consider and talk about. So there's a couple of steps that we've already put in place and we're beginning to put in place. The first is looking at an economic resiliency dashboard for the community. We're using the Gunnison County model. Folks want to take a look at that. But basically a way during COVID for us to start to look at economic indicators, behavioral health indicators, along with COVID indicators so that we can try and balance all three of those things. And then long term, I certainly want to have some kind of an advisory commission so that different folks in different sectors can have a voice at the table as we start to think about what are the industries that we may want to target moving forward.
Great. And that will be, of course, a big project. County has not historically had
That's right.
Or really played within that space. It's been something that's been left to the resorts within unincorporated Summit County, and then, of course, the resorts outside of that and the towns themselves. And
Right.
so we'll obviously be bringing in all of the towns, we'll bring in the chamber, we'll bring in a number of other interested groups as part of those conversations. And we, I think, expect those to get started here very soon. You mentioned the dashboard, and that will be hopefully up and running relatively quickly. We're working in partnership with the Chamber and Summit Prosperity Initiative to, I'll say, replicate or maybe improve upon the Gunnison dashboard, adding a few different elements that they didn't have in theirs. And so that'll be maybe the first thing, one of the first things that people actually begin to see. And again, we talked about it as a COVID material or piece, but I do believe that it's going to really be something that will far outlive COVID as an issue within the community. So other big topics that you'd like to elaborate on a bit?
I think, I've mentioned behavioral health. There's a lot going on at the state level right now around behavioral health. The state has proposed the creation of something called a Behavioral Health Authority, which would really be a way to bring all of the different pots of money that fund behavioral health resources into one place. Obviously, Summit County has really led the way in this space in terms of Building Hope and the Summit Foundation, in terms of the tax initiative that we passed, Strong Futures. So I want to make sure that as the state moves to this new entity, we're really balancing it with some of the ingenuity that we've seen come out of Summit County and really protecting that creativity. But I also want to see if we can leverage that infrastructure to help us create additional funding to support much needed resources. I mean, certainly everything that Building Hope and the Summit Foundation have done in this space, our partners at the Care Clinic, our private therapists, our law enforcement with the SMART team, which is really an incredibly innovative and successful model. And my hat's off to the sheriff for leading that. All of these pieces are great and are moving in the right direction, but there's still a lot more work to be done here. The Women's Recovery Center has done a great job of creating substance abuse treatment opportunities for women, but that's still a huge gap for men in our community. Finding ways to create more culturally responsive access to behavioral health is also a real focus. I want to make sure that we have no wrong door in terms of accessing behavioral health, and certainly as we come out of COVID, I think the need for treatment is going to be greater than it's ever been. If we look back at 2020, we lost more folks to suicide than we did to COVID, and so that's a really serious indicator for our community that we're going to continue to need to address.
Yep, absolutely. Huge topics. Obviously, lots on your plate, lots on the entire board's plate.
And we pass a lot down to you.
And again, lots on my plate, and we're, I think, up to the challenge. So,
sure.
Tamara, thanks very much for your first introductory TV show on the Commissioner's Corner. Thanks very much, and we'll be back again in a month.
It was great to be here. Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to digging in with everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Tamara.